Hello everyone and welcome to Video Games and Coffee. I'm your host Daniel, and today I'd like to talk to you about what is one of my favorite role-playing games ever for PC, taking it back to the early 2000s. Very unique and beautiful designs from the characters to the environments. It has an intriguing story that pushes you through the entire game and side quests that immerse you in the life of a nocturnal predator living in Los Angeles. This game has such a cult following, and I am glad to finally be able to talk to you today about Vampire the Masquerade: Bloodlines. Okay, welcome everyone. As always, welcome back to my return listeners, and welcome to my first-time listeners. This is Video Games and Coffee. I'll be giving you a little introduction into a game today. This is actually a special episode for me because I love this game. This is actually one of my favorite PC-only games because I think this is actually the first PC game that I ever purchased. So Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, it was released in 2004. It's a role-playing game developed by Troika Games and published by Activision. Made exclusively for PC, it never came out on any other console or any other platform. Now, this game actually used the Source engine, which was a gaming engine developed by Valve and used for the early Half-Life games. I've never played the Half-Life games, but this engine that they used, the gameplay is really good and very, very fun. Half-Life, I've mentioned this before in another episode, or multiple episodes, where I purchase games that go on like this ridiculous sale, and I just have them in my library, but I might not play them for like 8 years. Half-Life is actually one of those games. So if I should play Half-Life, if anybody listening to this says, absolutely, Daniel, you should try Half-Life out, go ahead and send me a message and let me know. That'll give me the push to finally go into it. But it's not really supposed to be a sequel to Vampire the Masquerade Redemption. You may or may not know that this game, Bloodlines, even exists. But Vampire the Masquerade Redemption was a game that came out, I believe, the year before. So it's not really a sequel to it, even though it's both, White Wolf Publishing's, creative World of Darkness, concept series and characters. They kind of call it an indirect sequel to Redemption, but I don't really think that there's anything that connects the two. So, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines is set in White Wolf Publishing's World of Darkness. World of Darkness is a series of tabletop role-playing games with horror-like themes and monsters. I've always loved the concepts, artwork, and just overall design of the Vampire the Masquerade games. I personally never played any tabletop role-playing games, unfortunately, even though I always wanted to get into it. So, you heard it here, folks. What's worse than growing up as a total nerd, but a nerd without friends? So, at least friends that were into the same goofy shit I was into. But no, I was never able to find anybody else that really got into the tabletop role-playing games. So, hey, if you want to be a future tabletop role-playing game playing buddy, just, reach out, because you are very welcome into this very small circle of people that I know. But the World of Darkness tabletop games were created by Mark Ryan Hagen, and I never really understood the tabletop RPGs. I know to me, I think of a board game as like it's a board game, right? You have the board out and you have the pieces and shit on it, but apparently Vampire the Masquerade and a lot of these games had like books that went along with them, which I never really understood what purpose the books served. So again, if you're into this kind of stuff and you want to fill me in and educate me, please reach out. But I've always found it very, very interesting. I was always somebody that really admired it from a distance, even though I don't have any actual experience with it. So Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, the development began in 2001. The release was November of 2004. And Troika Games went out of business in 2005, very shortly after. Obviously, something went wrong there, but they developed such a cool game that it's always one I come back to from time to time. The style, the design, the music, the gameplay were all, and in my opinion, still is, fantastic, especially for the time. And I honestly, I think the game still holds up today. So, to give you an idea of how long ago that was, it was around the release, like the same time that Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater and Halo 2 came out. So it was a ways back. Now, when I prepare for an episode, I do look up information on the game that I'm covering because, I mean, even though I like these games, I don't have everything memorized as far as, developer, release date, when it began development, and all that kind of stuff. So I do have to do a little bit of research. So I like to dig into it a bit and go to a bunch of different sources to make sure that everything, is very consistent, and I'm not just, I'm not giving you anything that, I just read on Wikipedia or this other site and that's that, because it may very well be wrong. So I do like to look around different sources to get this information to give you a good intro, and I do like to talk about the developer, because these games that I enjoy were all made by these developers. So they really do need to have, that praise. That's why I'm talking about it. So I do like to give them a shout out. So when I was researching this one, apparently, it's unknown to me, the game was released riddled with bugs and glitches and shit. I had no idea, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. So. But I had no idea that it was released this way. And the developers at Troika, they were being let go before patches could be made. And I did read somewhere that this game was released, I guess, early in November of 2004, and they started laying people off like a couple of weeks afterwards. That has got to totally blow. But Troika, from what I read, could not secure other projects and didn't have the funding to continue on. So it must have been terrible to release a game that they worked on and were proud of that could have been super cool and glitch free if they had further time to do so. But they had to lay off their employees almost, really just weeks later, almost immediately. So it really is a shame, because Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines was essentially released unfinished. And when you think about that, you're like, Jesus, how is that? How is that possible? Because this is not really, now, in modern day, we get games that have glitches and everything. And cyberpunk. But, we download those patches and they are released and they're immediately part of your game that you purchased. However, back then, I bought this game. It was on multiple discs, right? So I'm installing it. There, online play was around, but wasn't really super popular like it is now, and not everybody played online, so it wasn't like we could just, check for updates and shit and say, oh, there's an update for Vampire the Masquerade. But I guess it's something they would have released on their website that we would have had to install a patch for it. So I'm not really sure how patches back in the day would have worked, because I don't really remember. And again, I'll get to that why. Everybody's probably thinking, like, how do you not know all this stuff? You're a big gamer and everything. So I'll explain it a little bit. But so yeah, it was essentially glitches everywhere. Now that being said, there were unofficial patches released by fans, and this is the coolest part of this story here, because in an attempt to fix the technical issues and all the content that was missing or incomplete throughout the game, fans who also were, maybe not game developers, but knew how to do this and do that. A whole community that really not only liked gaming, but also liked Vampire the Masquerade, got together to try to fix this thing, because the developer was no longer there. And I think I really think that is incredible, that the gaming community came together to do that. So much that they put in time to fix it, obviously, are unpaid to do so. So they went as far as contacting former Troika staff to get their input. So the result is basically 2 versions of the game. One patch that is a basic patch. It fixes all missing content and allows you to complete the game and story in as close to the original intended version as possible. And the other one is called the Plus version, which adds a lot more content to it. I have personally never played the Plus version because I've always wanted to stick to what I believe was, more closely to what the intended original Bloodline story was. But I am considering giving the Plus version a shot, though, because, I mean, from what I've read, some liberties were taken, and I'm not sure how much of it is just completely made up content from fans, and if the game would still have the same feel. But I am thinking about giving it a shot because, hey, a lot of people put in time to fix this and make it more enjoyable for everyone that loved this game. So the least I can do is give it a shot. So I'll probably end up doing it at some time, and maybe I'll release a little bonus episode talking about the differences between the two. But I've mentioned this in another episode as well, that I'm really a creature of habit, and I tend to, I kind of stick to what I'm familiar with because I'm afraid of changing it up. I'm too chicken shit to do it, which is, why I always do the same things. I eat the same food. I'm just, hey man, I know I'm going to enjoy it, or I know I'm not going to enjoy it. So I'm either going to do it or not do it. So to play a game that I love a lot, in a way where it might be drastically different, it does sound interesting. So yeah, I absolutely will try it at some point, because from what I also read, fans provided voices for some of the characters, and I'm assuming there are new characters in the game that aren't in the original version of it. So that might be cool to kind of hear what fans out there came up with. So yeah, I'll probably be talking to you again about it once I try it. So here's what I wanted to talk about before, when I said, don't worry, I'll explain, why I didn't know about the bugs and all this stuff. So when Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines was released, I didn't have a computer that was able to run it. In fact, for most of my teenage years, I only had hand-me-down computers that were a bit dated by the time I got it. And when I graduated high school, I bought myself a laptop for college. That was the first time that I actually had a new computer at some point. So that was in 2002 when I graduated from high school and I was about to go into college. Now, it was a compact laptop with Windows XP. It had a 40 gig hard drive, 258 megs of RAM, and if I remember correctly, something like a 1.3 gigahertz single core processor. Back in the day, kids, we were too good for all those other cores, so we just stuck to the one. And I remember my buddies and I, when we would get a new computer, kind of a hand-me-down kind of deal, we would always gauge how much faster it was from the previous computer by how quickly it opened up, like, the start menu, that kind of shit, So when, on an old computer, I would hit the start menu and it would take like a few seconds for it to pop up. And if I get a new one, if it took like a second or two less than the previous one, it's like, oh man, this thing is just blazing fast. But ultimately, they were all just slow things back in the day. Now, this was 2002, so by 2004, when the game was released, after just doubling the memory in it, there wasn't much I could do to it, but I did double it to 512 memory, and this thing, even then, just barely squeaked by running Bloodlines on the minimum system requirements. I bought this game and was so disappointed to not have it run well, but I hung on to it, and years later finally had a computer that was able to run it properly. So I bought it because I knew it was going to be cool, and I hung on to it for years because I couldn't really play it. I couldn't play it. It glitched out. It was slow and shit. I'll never forget the opening cinematic to the game was just so fucking slow, and I couldn't take it. So I put it away for a bit. I admitted defeat, and then when, many years later, when I got a big boy job, I got another laptop. And and by the way, the beautiful specs that I just mentioned on this laptop that I bought at Circuit City, it was $1,600, mind you. Okay, $1,600 for this for this beauty, and it took me a while to pay it off. But boy, I was proud of myself. Geez, around this time too, I paid. God, it was like, I remember going to Circuit City also to get a new stereo put in my first car. That was like $300 too, which back then at the time was so much money. CD burner was $100, easy $100 back in the day. So we're taking it way back, kids. So some of you may not even know what a CD burner is, because not many computers nowadays even come with CD burners or CD-ROM drives at all. But yeah, so yeah, I'm not that old. I'm a little older, but I'm not that old. So don't judge me based on that yet. I'm still pretty hip. I'm just glad my wife's not down here to argue that point. So luckily, by the time I did sit down and play it, finally, it was patched by the fans that worked on it for so many years. So I didn't have a real bad experience. There was only one glitch, though. At some point toward the end of the game, there was an area where I can't remember very well what happened, but there was some glitch where I couldn't move, or I couldn't move to a spot that I was supposed to, or I wasn't able to interact with something or another. I can't really remember what it was, but it was something like that. And I was essentially stuck at this point. There was no way for me to continue on the game, and I was so close to the end. I thought I was like, this is bullshit. I'm Googling everything and trying to figure out what I'm going to do. So loading the previous save points just got me right back to this same predicament. I went back, 2-3 save points, and every time I come back here, I was still stuck. So I finally found a workaround online where I had to bring up an in-game console window that allows you to type in commands and enter the appropriate command that kind of unstuck me, and I was able to continue on and complete the game. This really was the only glitch that I had ever encountered. So when I read that the game was riddled with bugs, I was very surprised by that, because my experience was really, really good. But that is thanks to the fans. So if any one of you are listening to this episode, thank you very much. You make the game a lot of fun for me and all of us. All right, so let's talk about what is one of my favorite elements of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines: the music. The music is wonderful. Rick Schaefer is the composer who created such a good original album with tracks that fit the game style, the different areas you were in. It fit everything very well, depending on the mission that you were on or whatever particular part of the city. It was such good background ambient music. In 2019, Schaefer released a remastered version of the soundtrack, which also included 8 additional tracks that were never before released. There is also an album of licensed tracks for the game that's from various artists. The music picked for that album as well. Everything. That one is not. You have your score, right, that Rick Schaefer did, and then you have these licensed tracks. There's some really good tracks on it, but it gets kind of crazy. It gets pretty metal. So if that's not your thing, don't worry about it. There'll be other tracks to balance it out for you. But my favorite track on the licensed songs album is Isolated. I think it's just, when I first heard it, because you hear it in the game in a nightclub that you go into. And when Isolated starts playing, it's a perfect club song. It's the most bitchin' song, in my opinion, out of that particular album. So hey, if you agree with me, let me know because I love it, and it's it's by a woman solo artist, and I to this day I have no idea how to pronounce her music project. It's spelled Chiasm. So it's either chiasm or chasm. I'm not really sure. And I never want to say it because I don't want to mispronounce it. So if if she's listening or anybody listening is a fan also, please let me know how on earth you actually say that, because I would for once I would love to be able to pronounce it correctly. But the Rick Schaefer album is, I love playing it for background music here at home when I'm, working on something, working on a project, cleaning, anything like that. It's really good music. The music is really tight in this game, and I would imagine if you're a fan of this game that you would agree with me. So if you do, reach out, let me know. Okay, so let's go into what is going to be your first experience when starting a new game, when you're at the main menu screen and that badass theme music is playing. So, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines is both a first and third person perspective game. You start the game, you choose, do you want to be a male character or a female character? Now, the clans in this game, because you can pick a different clan, vampire clan, to be a part of, just like you can in the original, role-playing tabletop game for Vampire the Masquerade. So your clans are the Bruja, Gangrel, Malkavian, Nosferatu, Toreador, Tremere, and Ventru. So each have their own style. They look very different from one another. Some look high class and fancy. Some kind of look like the Bruja I know are real, punk rock anarchist type. The Nosferatu are the more deformed vampire clans. They look like the old school Nosferatu, with the bald with the pointed ears and the two fangs that are very close to each other, just like in the old Nosferatu movie. But depending on the character that you pick, you have some good variety there. So I think you'll be able to choose something that you like. So once you choose your appearance, you're now being taken to your character creation screen, where you actually put in like different attributes, abilities, and disciplines. You start off with a certain number of kind of like points, and you can choose to make your character, stronger in one ability or discipline than another. So it's completely customizable. So, for example, your attributes are physical, so your strength, dexterity, and stamina. Social, charisma, manipulation, appearance, and mental, perception, intelligence, and wits. So you can make some higher than others depending on what kind of a player you really are. You have talents, you have skills, knowledges. So like, brawling, dodging, firearms, security, stealth, computer, investigation, finance, all this kind of stuff. So as an example, lock picking is a skill in the game, and there are different locks that are harder to pick. And depending on how you fill out this chart, you can pick the locks much quicker and easier. Or, if you want to be a better fighter, then load up on your brawl. You kind of brawler type of skills here. It makes you a better fighter. Strength would help out with that too. Charisma, manipulation, that helps you when you talk to some characters in the game. You can give your basic answers, but if you basically load it up on your charisma and manipulation, you'll have other answers that you can give, other responses you can give to the character that you talk to that would kind of influence them or manipulate them in some way. So the game is really well thought out, because the more you customize your character in different ways, your gaming experience can greatly differ. So once you've used up all of your points here that you can start off with, then you go ahead and start the game. You are then taken into an opening cinematic, basically showing that you're on kind of a date, kind of a hot date. I think, I can't tell if you're in your apartment or her apartment or whoever, but I'm telling you. Well, I mean, the opening cinematic changes, and the character who turns you into a vampire, it'll either be a man or a woman depending on who you picked your character to be. But it gets, things are getting kind of hot and heavy. You go back for a drink, and all of a sudden, boom, turns you into a vampire. So you're a newly turned vampire, and then right away, before you can, lift that couch over your head with one hand, or turn into a fucking bat and fly or shit to like, damn, this is awesome, right? Some douchebags just barge in, kick open the door like a fucking Bruce Lee flying dragon kick. Super dramatic. Just kick open the door, stabs both of you in the heart with a wooden stake. And in this game, apparently, it doesn't kill you. It just paralyzes you. So it changes. Cut to, you're taken to what kind of looks like an auditorium where a guy, very well-dressed guy, very CEO looking, is talking about how, I guess it's against the rules to turn someone into a vampire without permission, in this particular community. And the person who turns you, the vampire who turns you into a vampire, gets executed in front of other vampires in the crowd, in the audience there. And, some, openly like, this is bullshit, that kind of deal. Obviously there's some animosity between the clans here and what happens, but everybody has to abide by the rules. And this guy the vampire CEO looking guy, who is Prince LaCroix, who has authority, over the vampires in the city. He executes the vampire that turned you and allows you to live if you work for him and, run errands and shit. But, the entire game is basically you get a chance to live and kind of make yourself useful so you yourself aren't, I guess, executed as well. So I would choose that route as well. So after you leave this glorious little meeting where you obviously puckered up a little bit, you meet Smiling Jack, which is, he's one of my favorite characters in the whole game. He's a vampire who kind of takes you under his wing. You meet him in an alley outside this place, and he sees you're a newly turned vampire, and takes you through. And this is kind of like your tutorial now in the game. He shows you how to feed. He shows you how to pick locks, how to fight, how to use stealth, that kind of deal. So what happens right afterwards is you're by this warehouse, and then you hear an explosion, and there's a raid going on between these vampires that we just saw and the Sabbat. The Sabbat apparently are, every clan, they're all assholes, right? But the Sabbat are kind of asshole-ish in a way where they kind of refuse the traditions that the vampires live by. So they're kind of loose cannons in a way. So there's this raid going on, and there's some animosity going on. So you got to go through this warehouse where you do your tutorial and you learn your basic combat, things like that. Once that's done, you meet up with Jack eventually, and he tells you to go to, you got an apartment now, which is really cool. You got a place where you can kind of keep going back to. So you have an apartment, and the game takes place in it's set in Los Angeles here. And your apartment's in Los Angeles. It's really cool. You go there, you check email throughout the game. You'll get messages on different missions that you have to go on. They leave you some cash to start off with as soon as you get there, which I'm like, fucking, this is awesome. I'm a vampire with superpowers and shit, and I got a decent sized apartment with privacy in LA for free, and they left me, an envelope of cash, which is awesome. And they left me this computer, this laptop. And I hope that the laptop they left me is more powerful than the laptop that I had when I first got this fucking game and I couldn't play it. So from here on out, you visit all the areas that you can, talk to all the different people that you can talk to. This unlocks missions, objectives, you know where to go next. There's a lot of cool submissions throughout the game that have nothing to do with what your overall goal is. It doesn't really fit into the plot of the game. They're just real loopy and shit. Like there's one side quest that has you hunting like a serial killer kind of deal. And once you're done with it, you could have done it or you could not have done it. It doesn't matter. But it's just like these little things, these little details throughout the game, which I found it so fun. They really made you believe that you were kind of living the nightlife of a vampire in this game. And I thought they did it so fucking well. And it's such a shame that Troika didn't have more time to develop this game, because I think it would have been even more astounding than what the end product ended up being. So, as I said, it's set in Los Angeles. So you have your different areas you can travel to. You have Santa Monica, you have downtown Los Angeles, you have Chinatown, you have Hollywood. All have their own music, all have their own different characters that you visit. For the longest time, I had no idea how the hell to get out of the area that I was in. And I would walk around everywhere. I'm like, how do I leave this fucking place and go and move on? Because I would check my map and I would see another area opened up, but I didn't know how to get there. And I was walking past it so many times. I was infuriated when I finally figured it out. You have to, now, I'm not trying to spoil it for you. I'm helping you out, believe me, because you might have spent the same amount of time that I did trying to figure this out. But there is a cab. So find the cab, find the creepy dude driving the cab. He's going to ask you where you want to go, and that's your ticket out of that place to another area. Now, you are what they call a fledgling. That's what they call a newly created vampire. And there are certain rules that you have to abide by within the game. So you have what's called the Masquerade, which is really in the Vampire the Masquerade, White Wolf, World of Darkness kind of world. The Masquerade is basically, keeping humans from knowing vampires exist and keeping vampire existence a secret. So you have masquerade violations that'll get you into some trouble in the game. So you'll have points deducted, and the game ends if you have too many masquerade violations. It gets harder the more points you lose. Hunters start showing up, although I've only encountered one hunter as a result of this. But things like feeding in public and being noticed like that, doing vampire-like things, using your powers in public, that will result in masquerade violations. And you don't want to do that, because you lose all your masquerade points, basically, game's over. You have your criminal violations. That gets the police after you. And being shot, even as a vampire, being shot is no good. Gunshots take off huge damage. So if you're caught stealing, if you're caught picking locks, if you're caught walking around someplace that's unauthorized, that's a criminal violation, and all of a sudden they will turn on you and will pursue you. So get the fuck out, because it's bad news for you. You also have what's called humanity. That's what you want to make sure that you keep track of. You have humanity points. Now, basically, if you lose, the more points you lose, you're kind of losing yourself to what they call the beast. Humanity is what gives you control over your own vampire self. So you start losing those points and you start getting real low on humanity, then you start going into what's called a frenzy. A frenzy happens when you just go fucking just berserk, right? Just, you kind of lash out, and you start seeing red and shit. You start going nuts. So if you're short on blood, or have been dealt a lot of damage, or if you lose too much humanity, you start going into this frenzy where you start attacking people, and obviously it's going to get you noticed, that kind of shit. So you can fix that by feeding. So you never want to get too short on blood. Feed periodically. If you take too much damage, feed. Now, you will eventually heal if you take damage. You just got to wait. But if you feed on people, then your health goes up much quicker that way. Now, you will lose your humanity when you do things like, so if you kind of see a homeless guy in an alley or something, so, you know, watch the Masquerade. Feed on him when nobody's looking, but feed on him only to the point where he's real low. There's like a meter that goes down, like a blood kind of bar that keeps going down the more you feed on him. Stop right as you get to the end. If you kill him, you lose humanity doing that, which then makes it easier to go into your frenzy. So everything is connected. You do have to abide by the Vampire Society rules in this. So it makes it a little challenging, but it keeps you on your toes and keeps you from just doing whatever you want in the game. Like I said before, checking emails I thought was a really cool thing. You can, when you have your own apartment, you can go back. Sometimes Prince LaCroix will shoot you an email to do something. You'll receive an email from Jack, or you receive an email from an unknown person, which is always kind of cool and creepy at the same time. But the locations that you visit have the different missions, and each mission could have different outcomes as well. So this is a game where it's non-linear. You can have different outcomes to missions. What people think of you in the game can change. You do have choices to make, so make sure that that you make the right choice that you think you're going to be okay with throughout the game. The ending as well, without giving anything away, you can have different endings to the game. So there isn't just one ending. You can have quite a few different ones. So it is, like I said, it's completely non-linear. You choose your experience depending on your choices. And I do recommend making sure your character is leveled up pretty well, because the further you progress into the game, the combat starts getting much harder. So you want to make sure that you can deal some good damage, because you will meet some bosses that will, man, they will deal you some damage if you don't make yourself strong enough to take them on. So just make sure that you pay attention to your Masquerade violations, your humanity. Don't get low on blood, stay well fed, don't frenzy, and you should have a really good experience playing this game. It's so much fun. This is without a doubt an RPG that really makes you feel like you're living this particular protagonist's everyday life, because you're there from the beginning when they were turned into a vampire, and you got your own place. You're sent messages. You got to interact with people. You got to go here. You got to go there. It's awesome. It's you immerse yourself in the game, and that's what always made it enjoyable for me. Now, what's got me really psyched is that there is an upcoming sequel, a Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, and I am super excited to see how this turns out. Now, it was announced quite a bit. I think it was teased back in 2019, so it's been a little bit. It's built on the Unreal 4 engine, I know that, so it's going to look great. We know that's an engine that, Jesus, man, I mean, a number of games are built on that, and so to see a modern take on this style game, I can't wait. And knowing that Rick Schaefer has returned as the composer gets me even more excited. However, it keeps getting pushed back from its initial March 2020 release date, with no new date announced, which is kind of scary. I'm kind of seeing the whole Dying Light 2 kind of deal happening here. It's like, why does it not come out? We've known about it for years. What's the deal here? So hopefully it's nothing serious. Hopefully it's just because they want to make sure they got real good quality. And hey, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'd rather wait a long time for a really good, solid quality game and not have something that's put out and very rushed. So I'm all in. I cannot wait till it comes out. But I hope that this particular episode gave you a good introduction to Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Old PC game, man. It's on Steam. You can get it on Steam. You can get it on God, what is that site? It's at GOG.com, I think. Yeah, I think that's what it is. You can get it on GOG.com. And I believe that if you get it that way, they also, I think I read that you get the patches with it as well. So you won't have to do any digging online to find where the patches are at. But I mean, they're super easy to find. I still have my CD case. I still have the original game when I bought it. And it's on this round, flat thing, kids, called a CD, a compact disc. Where to install it, I had to take out disc 1 and put in disc 2 and shit like that, which is just crazy to believe that, where we're at right now. But I hope you enjoyed this episode. I was excited to talk about it. I was excited to write about this episode. This is one of my favorite games growing up, and hopefully I found a fan of Vampire the Masquerade out there that listened to this. So thank you very much if you made it this far. As always, I really appreciate it. Thank you to my listeners. Thank you for my first-timers that actually got through minute 40, almost 41 now, before editing. I really appreciate you sticking it through the entire episode with me here. And, I always think about, so far the episodes I've done and have released are episodes that are games that I've played and I've thought of, but I would love to hear what games that all of you, the listeners, would want me to cover. So if there's any game in particular, hey, whether I played it or not, I'll go ahead and give it a shot if I haven't, and do an episode covering it if you really want me to. Just, get at me. You can email me on my website, videogamesandcoffee.com. You can find my email address there. You can get me on Instagram at videogamesandcoffeepodcast. And I love hearing from everybody. Thank you very much for everybody who's supported me so far. Stay safe, have fun, be good to each other, and I will talk to everyone next time.